Hi, my name is Watson. Welcome. This is Shonen Spotlight. Alright, it's the third episode of my Anime of the Decade series. I guess I should talk about why everyone watches anime. Flashy, bombastic animation. Anime is the undisputed champion of cool action. Where else can you see an orange-clad ninja punch a boy with a giant hand growing out of his back? Where else can a card game that you can buy right now be the most intense motorsport in the world? Where else can the consumption of a single potato chip carry any amount of gravitas? Nowhere. That's one of the many reasons anime is so special. Even at its most ridiculous, it's able to take itself so seriously that you forget that running around with a sword in your mouth makes no sense at all. In 10 years, we've gotten so many good action shows, and I'm only going to talk about 6 today. When I wrote the 40-plus entries in this list, these were the ones that stuck out with the most amount of cool stuff happening on screen. Notably missing are the long-running series like Hunter x Hunter and Attack on Titan that I like to give their own episodes, series like Gundam that fit better into another genre I'll get to later, and Demon Slayer, which I already covered in a previous episode. For now, the shows I present today should fill up your queue well enough, so let me take you back to the beginning of my journey with anime. It's 2012. Earlier in my high school career, I had rediscovered my love for Yu-Gi-Oh! Through 5Ds and actual competitive play. That led me to catch up with the other anime I liked, Naruto, and when I caught up to where the dub was at that point, I wanted more. Little baby me didn't like reading subtitles if he didn't have to. Then I watched Soul Eater, and decided I had to. No, sorry. I know that song slaps, but Soul Eater didn't air this decade. The show I watched right after it did, though. Tiger and Bunny at that point was the newest anime I had watched. This world has superheroes, but unlike a little show you may be aware of, My Heroic Macadamia? Sorry, someone spilled on my script here. Anyway, unlike that series, the successful heroes in Tiger and Bunny are the stars of the hottest reality TV show on the air, Hero TV. As they stop crime, the show awards points based on the effectiveness and flashiness of each heroic act. The highest scorer is crowned King of Heroes at the season finale. Our lead is a man named Kotetsu Kaburagi, the hero Wild Tiger. With his ability 100 Power, his normal human abilities increase dramatically for 5 minutes. Now, unlike his contemporaries, he gives very little care for showing off for the camera and prioritizes being an effective hero no matter the cost and collateral damage, upsetting his sponsors in the process. His rating was so low, and his sponsorships dwindled to the point where he was nearly booted from the show until the network paired him with a newcomer with his same power, Barnaby Brooks Jr. Now, Barnaby is essentially a young Batman in motive, a billionaire orphan bent on avenging his parents. Barnaby's style does not mesh at all with Kotetsu's, and they bicker relentlessly in the field until they realize how the other guy thinks and they beat the bad guy and friendship happens and yada yada yada. You've seen this before. And while done well, it's nothing new. What makes this show special is what they do outside of their dynamic. We get at least one episode focusing on most of the other heroes on Hero TV, like the Pepsi Ice Queen, Blue Rose, the Pyrokinetic CEO, Fire Emblem, and the ninja sponsored by anime itself, Origami Cyclone. And each of these characters is well developed, and their stories excel at letting that show through. My favorite is the heartbreaking episode devoted to the top hero Sky High. Now that isn't to say the leads aren't good boys. While I'm lukewarm on Barnaby, Kotetsu is one of my favorite characters of all time. What he thought being a hero was growing up is not the reality he lives day to day. He hates the celebrity act. He hates everything that keeps him from the patrol, even though that attitude is the very thing that keeps him so low in the popularity polls. Kotetsu is a clumsy, doting single father too. He's the kind of character I only want the best for. I could go on, but you get the idea. Now I hear you asking, how's the action? Well, this is a Sunrise production. You know, the Gundam company. The animation is really good, especially for the amount of CGI they use, and how it's composited into the scenes with the traditionally animated characters, and for the time it aired. And it's a superhero story with characters you want to succeed. The best action is magnified by its context, and that's very true here. You can have people flying around and punching each other all you want, but without an emotional weight behind it, the rule of cool can only get you so far. The only real fault I feel the show has is its forgettable villains. They aren't given the same careful consideration the heroes are, except for the anti-hero lunatic, who has his own special place in the story. Really, I'd rather not spoil any more than I already have. Luckily for the superhero fan, this wasn't the only dive into the concept of the costumed adventurer that anime had in store. One Punch Man. If you haven't heard of it, you must be new to anime. Come on in, take off your coat, stay a while, there's plenty to see, and this is a good place to start. Saitama is a guy who lives alone in the city doing normal single guy stuff until a monster comes around to end the tranquility of the neighborhood. Now, Saitama's depressed though. He can't find someone who can take one of his punches without exploding. All he wants is a challenge. Now, it's very relatable. I can't open a package of Oreos without it lasting more than 1 hour. I get it. For season 1, that's the whole joke. Saitama meets a monster tries to win, monster gets splattered against the wall, rinse, repeat. Now you may think that would get stale for a whole season, but no. It's just as enjoyable at episode 1 as it is at episode 12, thanks in no small part to Shingo Matsumi and his incredible team. This is the second most well-animated TV show I have ever seen, from the comedic timing to the scale and the fluidity in every fight. Now that isn't to say the web manga isn't solid gold itself, but the creator one's art style is lacking, to put it mildly. Thankfully, the anime is an adaptation of the Shueisha-published version of the manga, illustrated by the immensely talented Yusuke Murata. The world One created for One Punch Man deserves this kind of love. Saitama isn't the only powered being here. Each new hero introduced is more interesting than the last. Each new boss monster is more threatening. The Deep Sea King story is a shining example of both points. In these first 12 episodes is a nearly perfect parody of the shonen battle manga formula without leaning on being mean-spirited about it. The series understands what makes those stories so enjoyable and uses those tropes to its advantage. Okay, here's the hard sell. Season 2 is still good. Everyone dogs on it because it isn't as well animated as the first season, and yes, the second OP is hot garbage. That doesn't make it all bad. Season 2 expands on its world and spends time with a lot of the other heroes. As a manga reader, I knew this season would turn a lot of people off. Saitama takes a backseat for a new character who basically begins his shonen protagonist story in a show that took so much time to playfully mock that journey. The jokes are fewer and farther between, and there's an ugly-ass rich kid who just sucks. It feels like a different show altogether. Again, I'd argue that isn't a bad thing. Exploring this world is a lot of fun, and I love most of the characters that populate it. The hardest thing to sell this recommendation is the switch in studios and directors. There is an obvious change in the quality of action, comedic timing, and basically everything that made Season 1 so special. You can tell they were trying to imitate where Season 1 succeeded, but they missed the mark pretty far in a lot of places. I was so disappointed in the wasted potential of the Metal Bat versus Garo fight. The weight each blow had in the manga isn't there in the anime. But again, from a character perspective, there's still something there to enjoy. You know, if Season 3 never happens, or if the team from Season 1 never returns, I would not fault you for ignoring anything past episode 12. But luckily, One has another manga that was adapted into something nearly flawless. If One Punch Man is the second most well-animated TV show I've seen, Mob Psycho 100 is the first. These anime creators must be really passionate about One. I completely get it. The stories he tells are hilarious, heartfelt tales, but his art leaves so much room for an animator to strut. Mob Psycho 100 is proof of that. You can't get this quality of a product with no passion behind it. The story's about a middle school boy named Shigeo. The kids at school call him Mob because the kanji in his name can be read the same way, but for a narrative reason, Mob essentially translates to John Doe. Mob is a nobody who wants to be a somebody, so his crush might accept and return his affections. He also is probably the most powerful psychic being on the planet. A regular guy doing regular things, who is also incredibly powerful and emotionally troubled. Sounds familiar? Well, don't fall into that trap. One Punch Man and Mob Psycho 100 are entirely different stories despite some surface similarities. This is where one got his feet wet telling a traditional shonen story, to be able to mock it later with One Punch Man. While Saitama embraces his power and uses it whenever he can for equally selfish and selfless reasons, Shigeo takes the Uncle Ben stance and opts only to use his powers responsibly. Phenomenal cosmic powers are ultimately pointless if no one is there for the real you. There's a ton of quaint little life lessons sandwiched in between one's trademark offbeat humor and the most metal mind fights ever put on the small screen. You thought One Punch Man looked good. Yeah, it does. If One Punch Man is animated exceptionally well, Mob Psycho is animated prodigiously well, 1 degree higher, especially in its second season. Like, holy shit, these are no joke some of the greatest animated sequences I've ever seen. That and Reagan is the greatest character ever written. Memes aside, he is an interesting and complicated character, as are all of the main cast really, from Mob himself to the tiny evil spirit Dimple. I'd honestly love to go on and on about this show on its own, so I'll leave it here. Studio Bones has a large portfolio filled with awesome action. And if you've kept up with this show, you'll know how I feel about Noragami and My Hero. There's at least one more show of theirs I'd like to bring up today. Bloodblock Battlefront, or Kekai Sensen, shows a world where New York City is again a melting pot for many races. Not with Eddie Murphy and Arsenio Hall, or mice escaping the tyrannical oppression of cats, but with a ridiculous amount of supernatural beings. Now called Hell Salem's Lot, the city is surrounded by a dense fog that separates it from the rest of the world, while the Alter World spills into ours. I had watched 12 seasons and a movie set in this place. This city breathes, it's so full of life. Its structure is as crazy as its inhabitants. You turn a corner, boom, something exploded. You're walking down the street, bang, there's a giant monster eating someone. You're in the park eating a nice burger with your friends, bam! Some sadistic maniac is trying to cause wanton chaos for no reason other than he hates normalcy. We only got 2 seasons. It's fine. I'm not bitter about it, whatever. It's fine. It's fine. A boy named Leonardo Watch came to Hell Salem's Lot for a miracle and left with a tragedy. Now he lives here to find a way to reverse the damage. In his quest, he joins the secret organization Libra and makes a bunch of new friends. Kekai Sensen is an episodic show based on a manga by the creator of Trigun. The manga has a continuous story, but the anime knows its real strength is in its world and characters. If you don't want to watch a show with a character named Stephen A. Starface, I don't think we can be friends. There's Zap Renfro, a lecherous toolbag, Klaus von Reinherz, a beastly gentleman, Chain Sumeragi, an indifferent but caring woman, and many others in Libra alone that are also entertaining to watch. Most have powers that use their blood to do something really cool, and the animators let loose showing off these skills and a myriad of weird-ass monsters and demons to slay. I know it's the reason I'm including it, but the action isn't the main thing I love about this show. It's top-tier Bones material, absolutely. But the character writing is among the best, and the scenarios amplify their interplay. There's no other show that has made me cry about a mushroom man's life. Oh, and the soundtrack. It's just the kind of music that I love, jazzy old Americana. Very much the kind of stuff you'd expect from an old film set in New York. Oh, and there's vampires or something, and Leo finds a girlfriend, I guess. There is some overarching plot here, but don't sweat the details. This is a ride. Strap in, or your butt's getting left behind. Speaking of butts... Sound guy, I'm gonna need your help with this one. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 exclamation points in this title, and I don't think my voice can do that on its own. Ready? Okay. Keijo! Ooh, nice. Okay, now do that every time I say Keijo! Perfect. So you ever play Dead or Alive beach volleyball? You ever do the butt battle minigame where 2 of the girls stand on a platform in a pool trying to push each other in using only their asses? Keijo! Is that, but with Yu-Gi-Oh logic. Keijo, the sport, not the anime, is the #1 money sport in the world where girls try to knock each other off their feet using only the badonkadonk and the bazungas. I know this sounds like an excuse to show off girls with tig old bitties and itty bitty swimwear, and yes it is, but it's way more than that. I didn't put Keijo in this episode as a double entendre. As far as lewdness goes, that action is pretty tame. But they take this sport so seriously. It's girls throwing their busts and bottoms at each other until one falls. It makes it real easy to get some choice screen grabs, but
Keijo
has given me consistent laughter through all 12 episodes just through these butt battles. Every hit sounds like a gunshot, and the bizarre angles, postures, and proportions used to convey the gravity of the fights are just too good. Nozomi wants to become the richest Keijo player in the world. She and her friends are attending a school, a post-secondary school, mind you, not unlike Duel Academy in practice, to better their Keijo skills. This show is so stupid. It does all the things your average sports anime does, but with tits and ass, and cranked up to 10. Training montage, butts. Discovering your strengths, boobies. Visual metaphor showing off the power of a special move using an animal, you bet your ass that's there. Oh my god. There's ridiculous special moves, ranging from a simple butt check to references to final attacks in other anime. There's a point where a teacher just hip checks a piece of chalk to wake Nozomi up, and it flies straight as an arrow across the room. This is the kind of show you put on when you crack open a cold one with the boys. It's legitimately an excellent watch. I hate most ecchi material. I cannot stand pointless TNA.
Keijo
Is different. There's a sincerity to it that most fan-servicey shows lack. It helps that these girls are cute, too. I mean on the inside, you perv. All anime girls are cute. That's the whole point of the medium. It's the personality that determines the difference between a drawing and a waifu. To be fair, none of these girls are close to being a favorite of mine, and Nozomi kinda sucks as a person, but they do their tasks well. Now, let's not forget that this is clearly a shonen sports anime. There are moments when the characters learn what it means to go even further beyond. If you don't like this stuff,
Keijo
is not going to convince you shonen anime is better than sliced bread. But if you live and breathe the genre like I do, you'll have a good time. In your anime journey, you will run into the Fate franchise at some point. For me, it begins and ends with FateZero. The Holy Grail, yes, that Holy Grail, will grant one wish to those who claim it. Mages of the world race to summon one of 7 heroic spirits in an attempt to seize the prize. FateZero tells the story of the 4th Holy Grail War, and the people caught up in its wake. The Fate series is a deep franchise with intricate lore and timelines like a gnarled old tree that began with a visual novel called Fate Stay Night about the 5th Holy Grail War. That makes FateZero a prequel, and many argue whether or not you need the context of the original to fully enjoy it. I do not like visual novels. I generally do not like anime based on visual novels. The original adaptation of Fate Stay Night has aged poorly, and there's a reason I've put FateZero on this episode instead of any of the more recent adaptations of Stay Night. In my opinion, FateZero is perfectly fine on its own. There are a few ancillary plot threads that go nowhere without the context of Stay Night, but nothing is lost without its knowledge, and whether anything is truly gained is another debate. FateZero is the anime that turned Ufotable into a household name with anime enthusiasts, after they had a few original works under their belt. Its action is big and impressive, and its writing is a drastic improvement on its predecessor. The 7 heroic spirits are various historical or mythological figures from the world over, defined by a separate class, like a D&D campaign. There's Saber, Caster, Assassin, Lancer, Berserker, Rider, and Archer. The class distinctions are not always as clear-cut as you may think it would be. Keeping your identity as a closely guarded secret is the best option to keep the edge on your opponents when you're as famous as King Arthur. Each spirit has one or more noble phantasm, a unique item or technique from their lore that acts as the spirit's trump card. The spirits are generally obedient to the mages who summoned them, but act on their own free will. It's an interesting dynamic that allows both servants and masters to be whole characters. FateZero is a broad and complicated story following most of the 7 pairs through the war. A lot of them have motivations and plots that tie into Stay Night, and you can pick them up easily enough. The main attraction are the original characters. Castor and his master are a chilling couple that give effective oh my god moments. But the best of these pairs are Waver Velvet and his servant Ryder, Iskandar, Alexander the Great. Ryder is not a great anime man, he is the great anime man, and steals the show every time he's on screen. Iskandar is a true man's man and a total badass. His charismatic demeanor and his devil-may-care attitude affect his teenage master in the best of ways. This relationship is the core of my enjoyment for the series, and why I've been unable to enjoy anything else in the franchise, try as I might. It's apparently impossible to replicate even when Waver is the main character. Here I go again. That's the second time I've complained about not having enough anime. Sorry, I just feel so strongly about some things. Strong like the pythons on Iskandar. Netflix, if you end up doing a live-action FateZero, you best get Dwayne Johnson. Accept no substitutes. The Rock for Iskandar or bust. Now, unfortunately, this is not all his story. Waver and Ryder are secondary characters in the big picture. The established cast also has to do things just for the Fate fans. Luckily, this isn't a visual novel anymore. Saber is an interesting character rather than the completely stoic piece of plywood she is in Stay Night. Ryder, Archer, and Saber all have an interesting relationship, but Saber and her master Kiritsugu share the most screen time together. Their dynamic is interesting too, but that's a discussion best left for after you've seen it. At 25 episodes and available literally everywhere, FateZero is a show you can't afford to ignore. Well, that 6 shows brings us up to 17 anime of the decade so far. As I make more episodes, I'm watching more anime too. This list is ever growing. I started out with more than 40 shows, but I think I've got more than 50 I'll put into these episodes eventually. That's a good problem to have, I think. Links to the shows I've talked about today are in the description. Anyway, next time I'll step away from this series for something special. Make sure you subscribe so you don't miss it. This podcast is available on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Google Play, and YouTube. If you found me on YouTube, be sure to leave a like and comment telling me your favorite action anime of the last decade. You can follow me on Twitter at Shonen Spotlight for updates as well as my thoughts on newer series. And you can find links to all of my social media pages in the episode description. I'll be back in 2 weeks. Don't wait up. There's a whole world of anime out there waiting for you. Until next time, see ya.